Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So, as of September 27th, the Mechwarrior 5 DLC 5, The Dragon's Gambit, released, and I played through it just about day 1. I had to finish it on day 2 because I didn't have enough time. But as someone who recently just played through it, had played through the 2 previous mini campaigns of the Kestrel Lancers and Rise of Razzle Egg, as well as fully played through the other 2 DLCs and what they had to offer, I think I should voice my opinion on DLC 5 because legitimately, it's not quite as good as I was hoping for. It did a lot of things right, but in my opinion, it did a lot of things wrong and was sometimes a little lazy. Don't get me wrong, I still think it's worth that $15 price tag in the end, and if you're just fully focused on gameplay and nothing else, it'll be good and you'll be happy. But for me, as someone who likes a lot of creative liberties that are taken with DLCs and things like this, it fails in that department for me. I'm going to start with the things I like about it, end with the things I don't like about it, and wrap it all up. So as for the pros, it's a fair bit. Don't get me wrong, this isn't a bad DLC. It is totally worth the $15 price tag, if not just for the gameplay alone. Piranha Games definitely understood what was fun about this game, and it was just the fast-paced combat. And I say fast-paced with quotations because Mechwarrior 5 is slow-paced when it comes to the shooters. But the DLC has very much fast-paced, brawl-style combats that you would see a little more in Rise of Razzle Egg, but less so in Kestrel Lancers. There are a lot of times where you're just at point-blank range in your enemy's face. You got 4 allied mechs plus your lance mates, and then a whole bunch of enemies coming in wave, and it's really fun. There's definitely a lot of good that this DLC does. Every map has its own unique map, no reuse bases. I think there's a single mission out of the whole campaign that uses a generic base, and that's it. But every mission has somewhat unique objectives. Admittedly, it doesn't feel as fleshed out as it could be, but I'll get into that later. The other thing that I can praise this DLC for is the difficulty. This DLC is by far the hardest of the 3 mini campaigns. This DLC puts you cycling through your mechs very often and not having time to repair or customize your mechs, but only 2 or 3 times. So it really keeps you on your toes, and it forces you to pilot a lot of mechs with loadouts you normally wouldn't use. It may come down to you don't get to customize as much as you want. You just take off a few things and add some more armor. I think that's a decent gameplay, and I think this DLC being much harder is a lot more engaging. However, it's hit or miss with the difficulty, I'll say. Some missions are pretty easy, other missions are really hard. The problem is because of the lack of repair time and you don't know with your first playthrough which ones are hard, which ones are easy, you're going to be taking your A tank, you need your B team, and then your B team and you need your A team. And so it can be really frustrating to have that hard mission and you don't have the mechs you want to bring. In fact, this DLC, in my opinion, has the hardest mission pound for pound in the game. So hard, in fact, that I had no business completing it on the first try. I don't know how I did it still. It's definitely harder than Crucible. Crucible, the final mission of the campaign, is a fairly difficult mission. It's not insanely difficult, but the crazy thing is this mission in the DLC is not even the final mission of the DLC. Frankly, the final mission of the DLC is pretty easy. It's pretty easy. As far as the DLC is concerned, it's definitely harder than your standard mission and a fair bit of the campaign missions. But that bleeds into a lot of quote-unquote bad, I have to say. And it really sucks because these bad things don't outweigh the good. but it's going to seem like it because I have so much more to say about it. So, as for the bad things, it's just a whole lot of micro problems. One, I think the difficulty is partially a problem as well, because it is very common in this DLC, outside the first two missions and outside the last 4 or 5, for you to only have 3 days to repair mechs in between missions. That is brutal for a few reasons. One, this game expects you to have a constant influx of heavy to assault class battle mechs, and there are only so many available on the store which are fresh and able to buy. Just like all the other DLCs, all of these mechs are fully repaired, so you can just buy them and you don't have to do anything to them, they're ready to go. And that's something I feel that Kestrel Lancers, and less so Rise of Rasselhag, balanced well. Kestrel Lancers was an incredibly enjoying gameplay loop for me, because you had to decide when you were going to repair or when you were going to buy. And because you had around 10 days of time to repair, depends on the mission, you could actually feel like you're making a good decision there. You felt like you're like, okay, I'm going to repair this mech, it's going to take 8 days, this other mech is going to take 20 days, but that's okay, it'll be good by next mission. Or you go, this mech needs 70 days to repair, I'm going to sell it and buy a new one. That was incredibly satisfying for me, and I loved how that struck that balance in Kestrel Lancers. But in this one, because you only have 3 days in between most your missions, it's going to come down to, you're going to see your assault class battle mech. You start with a Night Star, by the way, which is insane. I was terrified when I saw that Night Star starting in my hangar. And I bring that out because I feel like I need an A-team, right? And the mission was decently difficult, but none of my mechs got knocked internal. But it doesn't change the fact that my Night Star is now out for 15 days, which is 5 missions. That's crazy to me that I'm using one mech for 5 missions. And you can't really just decide, well, I'll just not repair it, because they do enough damage to you to make that very risky, especially on some of the later missions. And to make matters worse, the campaign loves giving you tier 5 weapons to use on your mechs, but you can never feel like you can put those on your mechs because they take too much time to put on. Customization is really difficult, and that leaves mechs like the Stalker, for example, in a really tight spot, because no one likes to run that as a stock loadout because it's got all sorts of issues, but it takes too long to customize. It's the same deal with the Atlas. If you buy yourself an Atlas, you know, the stock loadout isn't bad, but you'd rather customize it a little bit more to fit a certain playstyle, to fit a role. But you can't do that because then your Atlas is out for 60 days. It's really difficult. It's artificial difficulty. It's not because the missions are hard, it's because they have really strained your resources. Some people will like that. I personally didn't like that because I felt like there were times where I was buying mechs that I really didn't want to use. Now, admittedly, I didn't have to restart a mission. I did every mission first try in this campaign. So, it wasn't a problem, but it wasn't as satisfying. My next problem is the DLC started out really good. I think it was really interesting. The concept, it was interesting, and the voice acting was interesting because there were new actors. Come the second or third leg of the campaign, now they're reusing actors from Rasselhag. It's the same voice. They didn't even try, and the plot's a whole lot less interesting. And it's also, as someone who is big into the Battletech series, a lot more concerning because they're literally just saying, let's just violate the terms of warfare because it's fun. And it's a very minor gripe, and it's a very nerdy gripe, but it still was just kind of like, it got a sigh out of me, to say the least. And so there's all these little problems that kind of muddied up the DLC for me. And going back to the hardest mission that was what I compared to Crucible, that mission was insane. I had no right winning that mission because it was stupid hard. I had been deploying my assault mechs prior because I felt like I needed those assault mechs. I didn't know the difficulty of the mission. So when I got there, I didn't have the Night Star I started with. I didn't have the King Crab I started with. Both were need repairs. I had a whole bunch of stock battle mechs that I bought off the store with terrible weapons. And I came out of it with having to sell all 4 mechs, because all but one got destroyed, and the one that didn't was the one I got to the evac zone, and it may as well have been destroyed. I had no business winning that mission. The only reason I won that mission is because I ran and hid in a corner until the timer ran out. I don't know how you're supposed to do that mission traditionally if you don't have your assault mechs, because they gave these to you with the idea that you're going to save them for that hard mission, and I can understand that, but as a player playing through this the first time, you don't know what those hard missions are. Every mission could be hard, or none of them could be hard. And to make matters worse is there's now difficulty settings as well. So what if you're playing through on a higher difficulty where the enemies are more accurate? You know, they headshot you more, they take off your legs more, this, that, and the other. They core you out easier, or, you know, your repair costs are higher, this, that, and the other. If you're trying to play this on a harder difficulty, this DLC will not be fun. And of course, because the repair times are so garbage, if you get that Battletech Mechwarrior brand luck, you're gonna be screwed. Because I had an instance on one of the later missions where both my Night Star and King Crab in a mission got headshot. The same mission. Now thankfully, it's not that difficult to repair, and by that part of time in the campaign, you have more time to repair your mechs. And I did complete the mission. But imagine if that happens in the early game where you only have 3 days and you lose one of your good pilots and it's harder to get a replacement. I see a lot of holes in this DLC that I wish weren't there. And someone in my Twitch chat noticed this, and I think I now agree playing through the whole DLC that it feels a little lazy. And you know what? They have a team working on Mechwarrior 5 Clans. Piranha Games is trying to keep Mechwarrior Online going. Make DLC 5, make DLC 6 that's coming out, make Mechwarrior 5 Clans. There's so much that's going on. I can't blame them for being lazy in these regards, and it doesn't ruin the whole experience. I still believe, despite all my complaints, that it's worth the $15, because a lot of those missions were fun. And it seems like I'm complaining a lot, and it seems like I'm ranting, and that's just kind of what this video is, because I have a lot of things I think about this. It's not really edited, I'm doing this in a few takes. But it definitely muddies up the experience for me, because I'm someone who likes to see more than that gameplay. I like to see a lot of effort put into it. And to bring up another point, which is a little lazy, they reuse a lot of the soundtrack from Razzlehead. The final mission of this mini-campaign doesn't even have a unique track. It uses one of the generic tracks you've heard a million times. I feel like it's from Razzlehead, but it might be from Kestrel Lancers. I don't recall exactly. That was really disappointing to me, because that's the end of the campaign. This is what it's all been building up to, and the story is already fumbling there for me. You're not invested like you should. I was invested in the story in the beginning of the campaign, and, you know, all this stuff is lore-based, and I know this stuff already, but I was still invested in the story and the narrative. But then you get to the end of it, and it's just hard to stay invested at that point, because you're not really fighting for anything. If you play through the DLC, I think you'll know what I'm talking about. But that final fight, that final mission, doesn't have a unique soundtrack. You're not really invested into why you're there. Hell, the quote-unquote final boss doesn't even pilot a unique mech. Unlike Razzlehead, where there was a unique Hanamoto Chi variant for that final unit, Kestrel Lancers admittedly didn't have it, but Kestrel Lancers, you were just fighting groups of enemies. There was no boss. This one had a boss. He had the special symbol over him. He was piloting a stock battle mech. They didn't even try to give him anything special. And it's really disappointing because when I was seeing that dropship, I was so pumped. I was so hyped to see what they were bringing. And it was just a lot of nothing. It was some generic assault mechs that you've seen before. So that is actually a rather big complaint for me, is that the final mission was a pretty big letdown, all things considered. But overall, I do think the DLC was very good. I just think there's a lot of holes in it, and they could have done more. Now, the DLC does bring a bit more to the table. It does have the Atomo variants, or however you pronounce it, and it does bring the longbow as well, but the Atomo variants are hit and miss. The Dragon and the Battlemaster are incredibly powerful. The Catapult is pretty good. I like the Catapult, but it's not overpowered or anything. The Mauler is a massive disappointment. They just gave an assault mech a bunch of machine guns, and it is very bad. I would never pilot that mech willingly. And then the Charger already exists. It's a Charger 3K. That mech already exists. I don't know if it exists in vanilla, but it's just a stock battle mech from lore. 4 medium pulse lasers, LRM-20 with Artemis. It's nothing special. And as someone who is a Battletech buff, it was a huge disappointment. And then the longbow itself, it's cool that the longbow is getting recognition, but the problem is, from a gameplay perspective, the longbow doesn't fulfill a unique role. And that's the real letdown there, because it's the same speed as the Stalker if you're using the good variant. If you're using the bad variant, it's faster, but you would never use that variant. So you have a few choices. You can either use it for its LRM role, or use it for an SRM role. Okay? So if you use it for an SRM role, well, now you may as well just use a Stalker, which already exists, and you don't even need the DLC for. But if you're looking for the LRM role, it's true that it fulfills the niche the best, but that's not saying much. Because with the buffs coming out, they plan to buff it after launch to fix its hardpoints. You could pretty easily run 60 LRMs on that mech. That's definitely the best in the game. Not many mechs can run that, if any at all. But once again, the Stalker can run LRM 40 and still have backup weapons. So it fulfills that role just fine. The Atlas can run LRM 30, which isn't nearly as high, but it can also pack a lot of different weapons on top of that. So you can make like a sniper build out of it. There's the Battlemaster 1S, which is kind of doing the same role as the bad longbow, just a little better. So there's all these other mechs that already fulfill this role, so the longbow feels out of place. And I didn't feel this way about the Crusader with Rise of Rassildag. Sure, we already had the Archer and everything, but the Crusader had a large diversity of hardpoints, a lot of missile hardpoints, some energy hardpoints, and some ballistic hardpoints as well. You could do a lot with it. You could make it at SRM Brawler at 65 tons. You could do an LRM mech. You could put on some AC2s or something and make it a little sniper mech. There was stuff you could do, some builds better than others. But the longbow, I just don't see that because it's just energy and missiles. So your typical build is either going to be SRMs and medium lasers or LRMs and nothing else. So the longbow just doesn't do it for me. And then Call to Arms added the Hatchet Man, which frankly the Hatchet Man's just cool to have because it's just got a hatchet, so it's just cool. Like, I like that the Hatchet Man got added. Sure, it doesn't really do much special as far as its hard points are concerned, but I still think it did more than the longbow. Heroes of the Inner Sphere added a whole bunch of hero mechs, which was great, and all of those hero mechs were really cool and different, and all of them were fairly usable as well, so that was nice. And Kestrel Lancers, while it didn't add any new mechs, it added a ton of new variants as well. So that was super nice. And it added the Mega City and new biomes and new battle types and everything. This DLC doesn't add new battle types. Let's go into that as well, because Wrestlehague brought Infiltration. Infiltration exists. Currently, it's the lifeblood of my challenge run I'm doing right now, but it's nothing special. It's not all that engaging most of the time, but I appreciate the effort in trying to put forward a new mission type. I do. Call to Arms was overall a pretty letdown of a DLC as far as all that extra content, but the fact that they added all these melee weapons and shit, I still liked Call to Arms. It was actually really nice to see all these mechs with melee weapons and everything, and you would see some cool, unique variants that come out of it. And then Heroes of the Inner Sphere was insane with everything it added. Admittedly, it's kind of not fair because it was the first DLC, so they had a lot to put forward. But not only did you get all the new hero mechs and everything, but you got the Champion, the Charger, the Corsair, the Dervish, the Hatamoto Chi, the Marauder 2, and the Vulcan all added in. Some of these mechs I don't remember not being in base game because the DLC has been out for so long and it feels so natural. And then it added like 50 something new variants as well, added the Solar Moon biome, added the Beachhead mission type, and then added Chem Lasers, mech rifles, Streamfire missiles, all the ECM and mask and supercharge and stuff. And admittedly, that stuff isn't the best utilized, but it's still there. This one just added a stupid amount of stuff. And now let's get into the free update, because a free update did roll out with this DLC, and I think this is my biggest gripe of the whole thing. And I know I've been complaining, this video is already running up to 21 minutes, I get it, but I'll tie everything back up in the end. But the free update isn't anything to write home about. It's just not. In fact, dare I say, it's a disappointment. Because this free update was an instant action update, and it added a lot of things to customize instant action. The problem is, who plays instant action? I don't think anyone does. And these new options, they don't do anything. They, give you the choice of having allies. They get you to run, like a free-for-all kind of style. Cool in theory, right? Well, I played around with it once I finished up the DLC. It's a whole lot of nothing. Like, let's say we do the free-for-all Solaris style. They showed a video where it looked fun. Actually going into it, it was basically just an assassination contract. Every once in a while you'd have a few units that spawn next to each other, and watching them fight was actually pretty cool because the AI was trying. But it was really rare to see that fight happen. Oftentimes, I don't know if it wasn't enemies activating because you weren't close enough, or if they legitimately just have a super tiny activation radius. I really don't know. But it wasn't as alive as it should have been. It felt like, going into this, that it should be the Solaris 7 mod that is being developed. It should act like that by the creator of Von Biomes. And I thought it was kind of funny because I was joking about how it's going to replace that. He's put forward all this work to it, and it's kind of going to make a lot of his work nullified. Not really. I don't see it because it doesn't offer anything. Maybe as some form of baseline, it might help. I'm not a modder. I don't know if it really does help or not. But it was really disappointing because that's all the free update added. And if you look back at, once again, prior free updates. They were so much better. Now, Heroes of the Inner Sphere didn't roll out with a free DLC, if I remember correctly, but Kestrel Lancers did, and Kestrel Lancers was the biggest one, even though it wasn't that much. It was just the addition of Melee, which was massive, and any of you who played remember that I think the community kind of exploded when they realized Melee was going to be in the game, and it works really well. I think it's fantastic. It was so cool. It was only one thing. There might have been a few other things I could be misremembering, but it was so big. And then Call to Arms added quite a bit too. When you die, you can still switch mechs, you know. You can drop over tonnage if you want to for a penalty, you know, all this other stuff, a few quality of life. And then there was Rasselhags, and Rasselhags, honestly, I don't feel like was a free update coming out with the DLC. It was just kind of an update they should have done anyways, because they were just kind of improving stuff. They did a thing with the mech bay, but no one really cares about that. It wasn't that big a deal. So, in comparison, this free update for Dragon's Gambit is better than Rasselhag. It is not better than Kestrel Lancers or Call to Arms. It is still relatively weak in my opinion. I don't want to end on a bad note. It was a fun campaign. I really did enjoy my time in this campaign. It was fun in the long run. I have all of these gripes. None of them were super major. None of them were all that serious. But I definitely think they could have done better. It does leave me a tad bit worried for DLC 6 that it's just going to be another lazy-ish DLC, because this wasn't completely lazy, there was just a lot of lazy decisions. I want to make that clear. But I'm just hoping that for Mechwarrior 5 Clans, that's what they're focusing on, and that's going to turn out great. DLC 6 for Mechwarrior 5 Mercenaries is probably going to tie into it, that's my guess, and I'm hoping that will have a lot more effort put into it as well, because no one expected DLC 6. I don't think many people expected DLC 5, frankly. I sure as hell didn't. Frankly, I thought Mechwarrior 5 was done after DLC 3, because that's how Battletech ended. We'll see. Once again, is it worth the $15? Absolutely, it's worth the $15. I think everyone will have fun with this, and it does add enough to the main game where you won't completely forget about it. Admittedly, it doesn't add a ton to the main game. I feel like it could have added more outside the realm of the campaign, like the other DLCs did, but it's okay. It's not terrible. It's not super impressive, though. I would give it a 6 or 7 out of 10. It would probably be closer to an 8 or 9 if the story stayed strong in the campaign itself. If they made a really good mini-campaign that was good all the way throughout, it'd probably be closer to an 8 or 9. But because it kind of fell flat, in my opinion, that bumps it down. But anyways, this was just a little rant video. I'm going to see if this does well. I might do this when I do the DLC 6 other games when I finish a playthrough. Make it kind of like a series kind of deal. If any of you guys have anything to say, if you think I'm way off base, if you think I'm spot on, I mean, just let me know in the comments. I'd love to talk with you all. Love to talk with people about the DLC. I think it could be really interesting. Maybe I'm missing something that someone else saw. And then I might make another video about it if someone explains something else to me. We'll see. But I want to do these more because I'm just kind of... I mean, frankly, it's easy to do, but I can also get some opinions out there for people to see if there's anyone who agrees with me. I'd love to do this for other games. I'll definitely do this for DLC 6 when that comes out, first fourth of next year. I'll probably do it for Mechwarrior 5 Clans as well. Those will be longer videos. This was kind of spontaneous. I'm just throwing all my opinions out there in basically one take. But anyways, appreciate you all for watching the video, and I will see you again soon.